This is something that like it's breaking my brain. I don't know. It's the whole like wage hike thing, like the minimum wage thing, because people will talk about like, oh, it's the minimum wage is stagnated with regards to inflation, but like, do you also look at like the cost of like rent and insurance and shit with regards to inflation, and all that shit's gone up, right? So if inflation is, if a dollar costs, if a dollar is less able to like keep a roof over your head, doesn't that mean that it's dropped more? Like, how the fuck does, how, like, what the hell is a dollar worth if not its ability to keep you like fed and housed and shit, you know? Like, what metric are they using to like actually measure the value of a dollar, right? Like, what's the thing they're measuring it against? Because if shit costs more than inflation would say it costs, then inflation is wrong. Inflation is fucking wrong. Like, who says what inflation is? Who defines inflation? Who defines inflation? How it's measured and managed. That's why inflation reduces the purchasing power of each unit of currency, which leads to increases in the price of goods and services over time. It's an economics term that means you have to spend more time to fill your gas tank, buy a gallon of milk, or get a haircut. In other words, it increases your cost of living. So it's a measure of your cost of living. But if inflation is not accurately reflecting the cost of living, like rent and insurance, then the inflation is wrong. U.S. inflation has reduced the value of the dollar. Compare the dollar's value today with that of the past. So as prices rise, your money buys less. For that reason, it can reduce your standard of living over time. That's why President Ronald Reagan said, inflation is as violent as a mugger, as frightening as an armed robber. Okay. The misery index. The inflation rate is more than 50% in a month. That's hyperinflation. Okay, here we go. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics uses the Consumer Price Index to measure inflation. It records the prices of 80,000 consumer items each month. So it's, okay, so there's something you're kind of leaving out if it's just consumer items, isn't it? I'm unduly mad about this, but like, if people fucking bring out fucking inflation, like, if that's, inflation is a useless metric if it's not like, but if you like look at the cost of like groceries and shit with regards to like inflation, like they've gone down a little bit, but the cost of living is still going way up because inflation doesn't fucking reflect the cost of anything besides consumer goods, the consumer items. I mean, if we only spend our money on fucking, on like Wonder Bread, then maybe that would be like useful. You know, am I stoned? Like, there's only $100 in the nation. $1 equals $1. But if there are $1, 1 equals less than 1. Wait, but that's not what they're using to measure it. They're using the Consumer Price Index to measure inflation. Because we've already dispensed with the notion that like, if we print more money, then we're just gonna, the money's gonna it's bad. It's gonna go away. Like, we've already like shown that if like we need money, we can just fucking print money. It's not real. Money's not fucking real, right? So and like from your perspective, right? From like how money actually matters to you, like a dollar is not a measure of like, it's not a like useful only as it relates to its proportion of like the amount of dollars in circulation. That doesn't affect you at all. Like, it's not like a thing that affects you. And like, we don't even know how many dollars are in circulation. So people fucking like light them on fire and snort coke with them and shove them up their ass and shit. Like no one, it's like that shit just fucking disappears. So like the only thing that like matters to you with like how much a dollar is worth is like, okay, how many of these will keep me sleeping indoors versus outdoors? And so if inflation says one thing, but it's like it clearly costs more than what then inflation is wrong. Like if the rise in rent outstrips inflation, then inflation is not an accurate measure. It's like the GDP thing, right? Or people bring up GDP. Like it sounds like a good metric, right? It's a number. It's got an acronym. It's a GDP. It sounds official. But it's completely divorced from reality. It's not like it's just like a little like segment of like how much like a Game Boy is gonna cost you. Like that's not, and that's not like, especially now, like that's not what like most of your money is going towards, you know? Like most of your money is not going towards groceries. Like the thing that actually is like the most of your money is going to is the very thing that's not being tracked by fucking inflation. I don't know. I'm just fucking mad about a lot of things. And now if anybody mentions fucking inflation, I'm just gonna fucking spit in their eye, I think. Oh. How are you doing? I got coffee. This whole thing started because I was like, I saw the fucking like rent thing versus like inflation and shit and like minimum wage. Like obviously like, you know, minimum wage hasn't gone up even to like match inflation, let alone the cost of living. But I was like, okay, well, let's check the cost of groceries with regards to inflation. And that seemed to track roughly. But then I checked like the cost of like auto insurance. And like, okay, well, here's the cost with inflation. It should be, you're spending $1,000 a year. If you compare it to like 2008, like I checked like 2008, I checked like the average yearly auto insurance cost in like 2008, and then checked like, okay, so with inflation it should cost this much in 2021. But then I checked how much it actually is, and it was 150% of that, which is not a small difference. Some would say that is outside of a rounding error. What's that? What's the statistical thing of that? It's more than one standard deviation away. That was another thing I like learned. What the hell is a standard deviation? A quantity calculated to indicate the extent of deviation for a group as a whole. But I calculated that shit. The population standard deviation, the size of the population, each value from the population mean. Oh man. So I'll have to know like the actual way they studied that shit. Yeah, never mind. Margin? Hi. Yeah, that's outside. Yes, outside of the margin of error. That's well outside the margin of error. How's it going, Tracy? I'm just getting mad about inflation. And I'm mad about inflation. It's housing prices, like housing costs are they're already not reflected in inflation rates. It's already something that's like, it's already outside of inflation. But yeah, obviously landlords are purposely holding onto land that they don't even use. They're obviously fucking manipulating available stock and shit. They're doing all that shit. They're doing the fucking diamond cabal thing. You know, say what you want about Mao, but he did murder all the landlords. So, you know. Some good and some bad. Thanks, Tracy. I was worried I wouldn't have a rant, but, you know.